mean, I've been talking about the climate crisis and the necessity for civil resistance for 2 years. And I was thinking the other day how I'm going to do this sort of 7-8 minute talk. So the phrase that came to mind for me was, you can't be serious, right? You don't want to engage in civil disobedience. You can't be serious. And I don't know if you know that phrase, but it probably show my age, but I think John McEnroe said it on a tennis court about 30 years ago. And it's always stuck in the mind. You know, it's that total incredibility of, you just can't be serious, guys. You know, like, that's what I'm saying to you. And I'm going to say you can't be serious if you're not considering engaging in civil disobedience for 4 precise reasons. So the first thing is that this situation is beyond fucked, right? In the most visceral, absolute sense. It's completely off the scale. And if you're going to understand why it's off the scale, you need to know the numbers. When you go to the doctor and he tells you you've got cancer, you want to know the numbers. So let's do the numbers, because you're not going to be terrified unless you know the numbers, because it just sounds like rhetoric, doesn't it? We've got a great problem. The earth is in danger. We need to save the planet. What the hell does that mean? This is what it means. It means we're at 1.3 degrees above pre-industrial. In the last 10 years, the temperature went up by 0.3 of a degree. Do the maths. That means in the next 10 years, we're going over 1.6 degrees over pre-industrial. That means that Paris is a complete delusion. It always was a delusion. And it's going to become obvious to everyone around the world it was a delusion in the next 5 to 10 years, because it's locked in. 1.5 degrees is locked in. We're on the edge of the cliff. And we're going over the cliff. It's not like we haven't arrived at the cliff. We're going over the cliff, right? Because we know that the Arctic is going to be melted in the summer by 2035. Peer-reviewed paper this year. That means we're going to add 0.4 of a degree to global warming. Global dimming, the pollution that's in the atmosphere, already means we've got locked in a 0.5 degree increase. Do the maths, right? We're going to be at 1.5 within 5 to 10 years, and we've got global dimming and the Arctic already absolutely factored in. That takes us to 2.5 degrees factored in. 2.5 degrees is the global average. The land average, you have to double or triple it. So in Africa, in the center of America, in Russia, in the landmass areas, it's going to be 6 degrees on an average day. On a hot day, it's going to be 15 degrees. Fact, when the temperature rises above 30 degrees centigrade, you can't grow crops, period. Okay? That means 2 things. The peer-reviewed papers say at 2 degrees centigrade, we're looking at 1,000 million people on the move. 1,000 million people on the move, right? That's 1 in 7 of the world's population. Half of Africa, most of Central America, India, Southeast Asia, right? The biggest fuck up in the history of humanity is already locked in, okay? And the second thing is mass starvation, because over 30 degrees centigrade, you can't grow crops. I'm a farmer, I'm telling you, you cannot grow crops at 2.5 degrees centigrade global average, which is 15 degrees above pre-industrial on a hot day. It's done. We're looking at mass starvation. That's the reality. And the other thing to really be absolutely terrified about is this goes on forever, right? It goes on forever. It's not like World War II, we get over it and pick ourselves up. We're on a slide down a cliff to hell. Right? We're not looking at the next 7 generations here. We're looking at the next 10,000 generations, right? Like the previous speakers have said, in the next 10 years, we're going to be throwing away the livelihoods of the next fucking 10,000 generations of humanity. There is nothing in the 35 years of activism I've done that compares with the absolute horror the absolute indescribable suffering of what we are dealing with at this point in history, period, right? Objectively, this is not rhetoric. I've given you the numbers. I could give 3 hours of numbers, but they're the killer numbers. So if you're telling me, if there's any of the 400 people on this call or there's thousands of people watching this video, and you're not saying this is the biggest crisis in human history, I'm saying you can't be serious. You can't be serious if you don't realize this is the absolute worst possibility that humanity has ever had to deal with. The second point is about, why is this coming about? Is this a meteorite that's coming towards the earth that's nothing we can do about? Absolutely not. For 30 years, the political class has had absolute concrete knowledge that this catastrophe is happening, right? They know, in full knowledge of the science, carbon emissions have gone up 60% in the last 30 years. The elites know it. The elites are guilty of the biggest crime in the history of humanity, period. Are you saying seriously, in 10 years' time, when these elites are on trial, they're not going to be found guilty? What I say to you is, you can't be serious. This catastrophe has been created by real people with real addresses who know precisely what is happening. David King, the head scientist in the Blair and Brown administration, said a fortnight ago that we have 4 years, 5 years to engage in massive investment in geoengineering, otherwise we're done for. In other words, he's accepting we've already fallen off the cliff. But is he going to engage in civil disobedience? Is he going to go into rebellion against the British government? Of course he's not, because he's a fucking coward, right? Like the rest of the political elites that me and Claire and other people on this call have had to deal with for the last 2 years. These people are psychopaths. They don't care. They're incapable of resistance. So if you're saying to me, well, Roger, this is just a natural disaster, you can't be serious, guys, right? So the third step is Biden is going to sort it out. You can't be serious. For 30 years, the conventional political parties dominated by the corporate elites have done absolutely nothing. Are you seriously saying the Biden administration is going to cut carbon emissions by 7.5% in absolute terms year on year for the next 4 years? You can't be serious, right? These people are dedicated to doing nothing that will undermine the short-term interests of the corporate elite. You've got 30 years of evidence. The reason why 200,000 people joined Extinction Rebellion in the UK in 12 months is because they lost faith in the elites. You can only lie to people so many times before they're going, you cannot be serious, right? So let's say clearly the Biden administration has zero intention to substantially bring us back from this dire situation. So that's the situation. We're dealing with the worst thing in history. We're dealing with the most criminal class in history, and the political elite has no intention to do anything about it. That means more than any other point in human history, resistance is now an absolute imperative. Anyone who's saying on this call that civil resistance is not an absolute imperative, then you can't be serious, guys, right? I've been involved in social movements for years and years, and sometimes there's good reasons and sometimes there's not. There are no good reasons for not engaging in civil disobedience at this point in history. You can't be serious if you're thinking that's the case. And I just want to finish by saying, what are you going to be doing in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, when a young person finds you're on this call, right? You know, when there's civil unrest, when there's social collapse, when there's mass starvation, and they said, you were on that call listening to Roger Hallam and you didn't engage in civil disobedience. You can't be serious. You can't be serious. What? You heard the facts, you heard the guilt, you heard the zero intention for this to be changed, and you just carried on. You cannot be serious. You did that? Really? That's what's coming down the line, everybody, right? This generation is going to be the most ridiculed, hated generation in the history of humanity because we sat by and let this happen. As a leading London lawyer said to me last year, there is no greater crime, right? There is no greater crime than to stand by and allow this despicable crime, the biggest indescribable spasm of human suffering in humanity, to continue. That's my challenge to everyone. Thank you.